Jose, it's like you've never done a podcast before today, mate.
I just want to do this on purpose since you guys say I'm always eating.
Hi, and welcome to the now awards-nominated We Needy Roads podcast. I'm your host, Neil, and I just about survived the Independent Podcast Awards in foggy London town the other week, where sadly we didn't win for Best Theme Song, but it was great to meet some Twitter people in real life and also get a nice midweek hangover because of the free bar. And also Jose and Cassie, Shake Shack saved my life. We have about 2 of them in the UK, and there is one now at the train station back to where I live. So I was like, oh, and it was still open at getting on for midnight. So now let me introduce everyone, even though I've already done it twice there, badly already. So joining us as always from sunny Portugal is Marie from the Two Girls One Reusable Cups podcast. We have Jose from sunny Florida, and all the way from, well, I'm going to be honest, I don't really have an idea what the weather is like in, where are you from again, Cassie?
Wisconsin. It's not great right now. Cold and cloudy.
We have actually seasons. In Florida, we just get hot and not so hot.
Correct. Yeah, I would say our seasons are similar to like what they are in England. We have like warm summers, cold. We get more snow here, but yeah, there's more variety than there is in Florida for sure.
I mean, all I really know about Wisconsin is cheese is big there, right? And you have a lot of lakes.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Cheese and lakes.
I mean, that's the stereotype. We're certainly not sitting around just eating cheese 24/7, but for some reason that is like what people associate with us. So yeah,
Cassie, welcome to the podcast, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Thanks. Yeah, so what I do in real life or my happy life?
Happy life. Things positive.
Yeah, I'm like a film critic and journalist. I've been doing that. I started doing it more seriously during like the lockdown era, pandemic time. So it's been a few years. I love doing talent interviews. I love, doing reviews. I just joined the Online Association of Female Film Critics this year, which is really exciting because I started getting screeners in my inbox for the first time, and that's without having to ask, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like Christmas every day when I open my email. So yeah,
Wow.
I just love meeting people like you and just talking about movies. I love talking about movies with people.
So you're way more experienced than us.
Boy,
We aspire to be in a position to get screeners, but I mean, like we start me and my original co-host David. We literally started this like everyone else did during COVID, just chatting about movies, and then we kept going like a year or so later, and then he got married, child on the way, and he's like, can't really do the podcast as much. But bizarrely, since then, I was like, Jose, I need because you used to comment in our articles, didn't you? He was like, so Jose, come on the pod. And then we had a friend, Ben. Our friend Ben came in as well. And I've known Ben since we were 15. And we're way much older than that now. But his day job, he wanted to be a rock star. Didn't really work out. But he then became a tour manager. So now he's literally in Australia on tour with punk bands. And that's his day job, which is pretty sweet. Also means we get free gig tickets when he's around as well, which is very, very good.
Nice perk, yeah.
Nice perk, yeah. And also, I did notice every other tweet you post, Cassie, is about Pedro Pascal. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Totally fine.
I'm constantly apologizing for my Twitter account. I need to reel it in, and I just can't.
I feel like you should just say it with your chest.
I do,
all the way.
as to the point where I can't get fired because a lot of my coworkers follow me on there too. So I can't say everything that's on my mind. I try and keep it PG-13. But yeah, I'm a big Pedro fan.
I gotta ask, what do you think is his best film right now?
His best film? I just love him as a person. Don't ask me what his best film is. I watched The Last of Us and I was just a goner after that, quite frankly. Yeah, I just love him.
I have to say, the one he did with Nicolas Cage, just that long title I never remember.
The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Oh, sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I've only seen
I love that.
it,
And
honestly.
I'd say take your time, but you definitely got to watch it eventually. It's a hilarious
Oh, it's
hilarious
just a
film.
buddy film. They're so good together,
Yeah,
the two of them. I loved it. Yeah.
and it turned me on to Paddington, surprisingly. So
Oh yeah, yeah, right. Because he says Paddington too. Yeah, third favorite
yes,
film of all time or something like that. Yeah,
That's the one.
exactly. So I
I've
was
seen
like,
that.
okay, I gotta check
Yeah,
this out. You know, when a movie talks about another movie, you gotta look into it.
right, right.
I mean, I'm taking my dad in a couple of weeks to see Gladiator 2 in IMAX, and he's never been to an IMAX film before. So, yeah,
Oh,
you're going to get to see Pedro Pascal, 20 feet tall on the big cinema screen over here. So, yeah, looking
I
nice.
mean,
forward
he's
to that.
probably definitely gonna die. I don't know that for sure, but I think we all know. Like,
We were debating this when we saw the trailer. We were just like,
yeah,
he doesn't
yeah,
do well in arenas, like if you remember
uh,
Game of Thrones.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But then I feel like that's the obvious one to go for. I reckon he's going to survive. I reckon you're going to think he's going to die then, and he might survive till near the end.
maybe. I've heard he only has like 10 to 15 minutes total of screen time. So
Oh, really?
really?
yeah,
Oh,
Oh,
well. Then the
so
trailer's definitely messing with us.
yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, the trailer makes it look like he's
He's
the
the main
star,
one.
but he's not.
interesting.
Okay, so moving on, we're going to move into our what we've been watching section. So this is kind of just basically exactly what it is. What we've been watching recently. It can be TV, it can be film. Marie, what have you been watching recently that we are not going to be talking about in the show later?
Nothing.
As what, which
That's
is what I
honest.
thought you was going to say.
Yeah. My life has been consumed by one show, but we're going to be talking about that not this episode, but the following one. So
Consumed is the word. Going to our first time guest, Cassie. What have you been watching recently?
A lot. So the exact opposite of Marie. I went to see Here in the theater yesterday with my friend, which we knew it was not going to be great going in. And man, what a roller coaster of emotions. Just phenomenally strange movie from start to finish. Just bonkers. Like some really weird, uncanny valley green screen, some just very questionable scripting.
Oh,
But you know what? Like, yeah, we were talking about it after. He's a critic in Chicago. And we had to give it credit for, I mean, it's a really bold concept. I don't know if you know about it, but it's the Robert Zemeckis movie where it all
Hmm.
takes place in one place. It literally starts
it's Tom
out like
Hanks.
the dinosaurs, yes.
Oh, it
And
starts with the dinosaurs.
literally,
What?
yeah, it goes from
Wow.
like the comet hits the earth, and then it passes through all these different, like Native Americans, and then there's like Benjamin Franklin lives there. A lot of really important
Oh,
people in
wow.
history lived in this house,
Of
which,
course, of
what are the
course.
odds, I mean, the guy who invented the lazy boy is a character. Why? I don't know. Why? I'm telling you, it's just so strange. But as weird as it is and as not great as it is, it's also very nihilistic and just very, very sad. So at the end, I'm just sobbing but also laughing because it was bad. And my friend was like, "Are you crying because you're sad or crying because you're laughing so hard because it was bad?" And I'm like, "Yes, all of those things." All of it. I mean, it's something it's an experience, I'll tell you. Yeah.
Wow.
It's an experience. I don't know. See it
It's an
yourself. Make
experience.
make up your own mind. So that was yesterday, and then let's see, and then I finished the second half of Frasier season 2, the reboot. As I was talking about before, I love the original Frasier is like my favorite show of all time. It's very
All
special to me
time. Wow.
of all time. Yeah, I don't know if it's just the nostalgia or what. I just love the humor and I just think it's a great show. So I was a little hesitant going into the reboot, and I thought season 1 was okay. And when they sent the screeners to me for season 2, there's like 10 episodes total, and they just sent the first 5 to begin with. So when I reviewed it, I was like, God, this is bad. Like it's not good. Like this is really going downhill, and it broke my heart because I want to love it because it's Frasier and I love Frasier. And then I finally got around to watching the second half over the last couple of days, and it really finds its stride. Like Roz is now a regular recurring character again, and just having Roz and Frasier together again, just there's something there that was missing like earlier on. yeah, I feel like they're leaning into some of the things that made the reboot better, and relying less on some of the side characters that we kind of just I didn't care about. I mean, nothing against them, but like, you know, you tune in for Fraiser and for Roz and for that nostalgia, not necessarily the new characters that you like you're not watching for. So yeah, I hope it gets picked up again. I mean, I'd like to see it get a season 3. Um, so I've been watching Frasier, and then the awful Menendez Brothers show that I'm weirdly obsessed with. Just because I love the actor who plays Eric. He's like so cute and I love him so much, but the show's so bad, but I can't stop thinking about it.
This is the Ryan Murphy one, isn't it? Monsters, the second series.
It's oh my God, it's so bad, but I can't look away. It's like a car crash. I don't know. And all the drama behind the scenes of like it's just I like don't need to go into it because there's a lot I could talk about it for like 5 hours, but it's yeah. It's been consuming a large portion of my brain for the last month or so.
So what do you think made the change to have it not be as good as the previous installment?
Probably just the fact they had to make a second series, Jose, after the first one was a success.
I mean, I don't think Dahmer was that good either.
I thought Dahmer was okay.
David was a big fan of Dahmer.
So he took a lot of, I don't know if you'd want to say creative liberties. He insinuated a lot of things that were like kind of offensive to the brothers who are currently in jail. I mean, he insinuated that they had like an incestuous relationship with each other, which they're like, no, we didn't. It's really
and he didn't interview the brothers.
I want to say no one loves gay guy stuff more than me. I'm a huge gay guy fan, but like I love it.
You're in good company.
We move on to it to one of my shows.
That said, it was like it's so like unnecessarily horny. Like this is a show about two guys who you know, killed their parents because they were being like horrifically abused by them. And it just feels really just unnecessary at times. That said, there is another very large part of me who just appreciates seeing like hot gay guys. So you know, this is why I'm so torn. As a journalist, as a critic, like I feel like I can't respect it because it is kind of problematic. But there's another like part of me that kind of it's like a hot fudge sundae with sprinkles in TV form, or just like it's super overindulgent and like
would this fall into guilty pleasure zone?
Yeah, sure, very guilty. Like I'm kind of like, should I be talking about this right now? Yeah, so there you go. That's my very, very, very long answer of what we've been watching.
Awesome.
That is not even close to the longest one we've ever done on here.
Oh, good. Okay.
we had ones, what we've been watching section once, and went so long that was basically the podcast, and we had to move the main reviews to another one because we'd already been talking for about 2.5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The format is very loose here. Yes. Jose, what have you been watching recently?
So I've come to the realization I'm addicted to YouTube. And it's ironic. I watch.
Are you 14?
Channels.
I was about to say, does this count? I don't think this counts.
So trust me, it's going somewhere. But I realized I watch a lot of channels that talk about upcoming movies. So it's kind of ironic that I don't watch as many movies as I should. But the few things that I have watched, I've noticed Netflix has kind of gotten back into my rotation. But it's in a weird way where I don't finish some things. I'll try to watch something like there's this movie called Uglies. About you could tell it's like a young adult ripoff.
The young adult dystopia, yeah,
and it's like for some reason everyone becomes pretty at the age of like 18, and they get surgeries, and I'm like I tried watching it and I could see kind of where it was going, but I just didn't care enough to finish. And then I watched a little bit of Gundam Requiem for a Vengeance. It's a
based on a manga.
Yeah. And the first episode was pretty solid, but it's just not my genre. But I just wanted to check it out just to have something else on my repertoire. I could probably watch it like if I'm doing something else, but it's not really my thing. And then, you know, I really, that's that kind of like the short list of it. I kind of repeated a couple shows. I went back to Altered Carbon season 2 to kind of see what that was. I didn't finish it. I got a couple episodes in. It's honestly not as good as the first season. The first season was just solid. Same. And then every once in a while, I'll go back to Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You can't go
Comfort
wrong
show.
with
Of course.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah. For me, it's Parks and Rec and Community. Yeah, they're the two. They're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
they are they are my Hot Fudge Sunday shows there.
There we go. Yeah.
Now, a show I've been watching that is I don't think anyone knows it. Like, it's on Amazon in the UK, and I don't know if anyone ever mentioned it. It's called The Devil's Hour, and it's the second series of it. It stars British actress Jessica Raine and Peter Capaldi, so from Doctor Who. And season one, I think, was so badly mismarketed because it looked like a spooky kid horror show. You know, there's this spooky kid who's seeing ghosts, and Peter Capaldi's a serial killer who's going, well, obviously killing people because he's a serial killer. And but instead of a detective after him, the main actress is a social worker. So you're like, okay, this is kind of weird. And she keeps waking up at 3:33 in the morning, which is the devil's hour because it's 666 the other way around. And so I was like, but it's not a horror show at all. The more you watch it and the clever it's put together, it's like this twisty-turny, almost Christopher Nolan-esque drama. The reveal at the end of the first series, literally, it's kind of like the 1899 thing, Marie. It's kind of, it would have changed the genre of the show for the second series. Except here, we got the second series, and then we're actually doing the third series as well now, because they actually, it's just nice when a streamer commits to a series and they go, right, we've got an arc of 3 seasons. This is where it starts. This is where it ends. And the actress herself said in an interview, oh, well, I signed on because this is what the arc of the character was. And it was going to be great if we could play it all. Yeah. So like season 2, though, is only sadly 5 episodes, and maybe it's not as good as the first series because it's kind of like that Usual Suspects moment in the end of the first season when all the bits chop together and like, wow, it's kind of what you're going to be talking about on an upcoming one, Marie, where the plot, where all these like random lines and bits there and then you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why was that line said? And then you have to go back and watch it again because I watched it myself and kind of enjoyed it. Then I got to that big reveal and I was like, this is amazing. And I was like, Dad, you're going to like this. And he's like, no, I don't know. I was like, trust me, stick with it, watch it. And he loved it. And so we've just binged all of season 2 in last week. But I don't really want to say anything more about the plot because it's really. But I will say, if you see the adverts on Prime Video for it, really give it a go. It's just, I think, the best thing the actress has done. She's kind of done like primetime British shows. Jessica Raine, she's not really done too much out there. I don't think she's done much in the States or many movies, but she's so good in the show. And of course, Peter Capaldi is Peter Capaldi. You know, he's always going to be good. One thing I have also watched is I've finally caught up from the start on, I think it's 6 episodes now of The Penguin. And holy shit, is it good. I mean, we all know it was going to be good, right? We knew Colin Farrell would be excellent because he was great in the Matt Reeves Batman film. But the undoubted MVP of the whole show is Kristen Miller is Sophia Falcone. I mean, she should be up for Best Actress at the Emmys immediately from this. She's so good. But we get a flashback episode, a couple of episodes in, and you see her whole character arc from like the early days to right where she is now, which is great because it juxtaposes what's happened to her. And is she this basic psychotic murderer that we all think she is, or isn't she? And the show kind of, I really appreciate the slow burn character-based drama it is, rather than it being this kind of superhero adjacent show, which I think of a lot of people thought it was going to be. I mean, you can clearly see they were influenced by Sopranos from it. I even think some of the producers were involved with it back in the day. And if you're not a superhero fan, it doesn't matter because I think it uses the odd name or the odd location Easter egg from Batman lore, but you could absolutely watch it as this great standalone crime drama. I honestly think this is one of the year's best. I think we've got 2 episodes left for this season, and so the only real question is there going to be a second season? I'm sure we're going to be talking a full spoiler bit on this once the last 2 episodes have aired as well.
So I'd like to say I have been watching this, and I'm not going to talk about it more, except for one little tidbit. My brother-in-law and I watched it, and in the first episode, there's just a moment where he's doing stuff, and then he's like, you know what? Let me just watch the sunrise. And I was like, okay, that's weird, but okay. And then my brother-in-law was like, do penguins like watching sunrises? And he looked it up, and penguins like watching sunrises.
No
and I
way.
just thought that was the funniest little like lore adding to that show. So they really do their research, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
I need to put your Jose's fun fact graphic on screen for this now, mate.
Hey,
I did not know that. That's awesome. Yeah, but
I got to give it up to my brother-in-law because he's the one that even caught that. I was like, what? That was so good. That was too good.
And so the most recent thing I've seen, which literally was the cinema the other night on Halloween, and it was a preview screening of the new Hugh Grant A24 horror film, Heretic.
Man.
And it's from Scott Beck and Brian Woods, who made the really, really disappointing Adam Driver versus Dinosaurs film, 65, in my opinion. Well, thankfully, they fully redeemed themselves here. This is such a good film. I think it's one of the best horror films of the year. I think if there wasn't such like a stigma about horror, this would be up for like again. I know David says I say it all the time when I see a film I like, but this is an awards-worthy film. Like Hugh Grant is so good in it. He plays the outwardly cheery Mr. Reed, who, as you see from the trailer, traps two young Mormon missionaries in his house and then makes them question their beliefs about faith and basically about everything. And I love Grant's kind of move now into creepy older character territory. You know, he did his years and years of rom-coms, and then, you know, he had his villain performance in Dungeons and Dragons the other year. I mean, he was basically just playing a Tory MP in that, which was, you know, he was literally just like, I'm going to be a politician in that. And this one, I think what works really well in this one is that he's kind of playing. Okay, so I've got something I like to call the Bill Murray syndrome, right? In the 80s and 90s, Bill Murray, he gives you these great sarcastic deadpan comedy performances in pretty much everything he does. But then most of the last 20 years, I'd say from Lost in Translation onwards, he gives the exact, and a lot of his Wes Anderson work as well, he gives the exact same performance, but in a drama. And so I think this generation of like young writers and directors have kind of grown up loving what Murray did and thought, but if we take that exact performance and put it in a drama, it's going to be like bittersweet. It's going to be tragic. And I don't ever really think Murray's doing much different than what he's always done. It's just that the filmmakers have kind of viewed him in a certain way and go, okay, we want him to be in. We're going to portray him in this kind of way now. So as he's got older, he's not as funny as what he says. He's, you know, it's a bit sadder. It's a bit more tragic. And so, and I think that's exactly what Hugh Grant's doing now. He's moving into this. I mean, he is basically playing 90s rom-com Hugh Grant in this. He's just a bit older, but he's still like cheery and that's what makes him more terrifying because you've taken 90s rom-com Hugh Grant and made him slightly creepy because he's older and he's locked in a house with two young girls. But he's still smiling and he's still really polite. And you're just like, no, it's wrong. Get out of there. Get the hell out of there now.
I was going to say that might work on me. I might be even more intrigued by him acting like a total creep.
I'd say he also kind of had shades of this in The Gentleman movie in 2019 with Matthew McConaughey. He played like a side character who wasn't really good, but not bad either. But so yeah, this really, I feel like he's been doing a lot more for a little while now with the darker side of things.
I mean, yeah, like you said, he did that. He did Dungeons and Dragons. He's done this now. I think he did. There was a TV show he did with Nicole Kidman as well. Was it The Undoing?
I was just gonna say, I was thinking about that. What was that show called? It was good, but I can't remember. But he was a creep in that one.
I wonder if he's even acting at this point because I remember. Well, actually, there's a story that will tie into someone I'm reviewing later about Hugh Grant, which is kind of cool. Yeah, must mention the young actresses in there. You've got Yellow Jacket Sophie Thatcher plays Sister Barnes, so she's kind of the more well-known one, and the actress out of the two. She was also in was it Ahsoka as well, wasn't she? Was she one of the Star Wars shows? But relative newcomer Chloe East, who I've never seen in anything, and I looked up her IMDb and she's done very little. She plays Sister Paxton, and she is awesome in this film. And then I was looking her up, and she's like in a film with Margot Robbie soon. She's in a film with like her next two films are giant films by like superb directors. So she's boom like off. And when you see her in this, you'll understand why she's so good. So I would say this is definitely a horror film, but it's very light on the gore. If you don't do horror like Marie, you're not a horror person at all, right?
As
very
we
little
established
gore.
last week.
We established on our horror quiz special, which David forced us all to do. Yes, we have. Yeah, so it's very light on the gore, very light on the jump scares. Instead, it's a really talky, but in like kind of good way film. You know, once Grant has the girls in the house, he challenges their beliefs, and just as they start challenging his. So yeah, on paper, a 2-hour discussion about theology might not sound like something you really want to see in the cinema, but it's so superbly written, and all three of the principal leads give great performances. And like I said, a special shout out to Chloe East, who I hadn't seen in anything before. Easily one of the year's best horror films, but not really horror. I mean, it's a horror film, but
would you say it's
kind of low on a scale?
Would you say it's more of a thriller then? Just a lot of suspense?
because where the film goes eventually is horror territory.
Okay,
but it's you know, if you had to like say, I don't know, something like Terrifier is a 10 out of 10 on the gore horror scale, and this would probably be a 2 out of 10 on the gore horror scale. There's really not much, you know, kind of that kind of horror in it. It's more psychological and cerebral. It gets you thinking as you're watching it. Awesome. And there's some, and then, like again, there's a story Hugh Grant tells in the film that he goes, and that when the writer and the director told him this story himself, he's like, that's actually what made me want to sign on for the film.
Wow.
And you'll know it when you see it, that bit. There's a brilliant bit in the film. Also, you'll never be able to listen to Radiohead's Creep the same way again after this.
Oh, that's even better.
Or
That's a
Hugh
great
Grant,
song.
or Hugh Grant singing it.
Oh,
Disturbingly bad. Well, just disturbing. It's just disturbing.
that's awesome. I gotta watch this now.
Okay, so now we are going to move on to our reviews. And Marie, first up, you're going to review a show that I had really very little interest in watching because I can't stand Danny Dyer, but also it's a show that Disney Plus has made sure to remind everyone to update their passwords and content settings for, because it is the soapy shagfest that is Jilly Cooper's Rivals.
Yeah. Everyone sit back. The tea is scalding on this one. So, right. So yeah, Rivals. So yeah, as Neil mentioned, this is a Disney Plus show adapted by a novel of the same name by Jilly Cooper. I did actually not know that until Neil pointed this out right before recording. The story is set in 1986, following a rivalry between Posh Twat number 1, played by David Tennant, and Posh Twat number 2, played by Alex Hassel. And currently it stands at a 94% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 8 out of 10 on IMDb. And my question is, did we watch the same TV show? Because this was honestly god-awful. And I have generally a rule when it comes to TV that if I don't like it after 3 episodes, I'm out. But because of the sake of the podcast and because these two were egging me on, I stuck it out, and now I want those hours back because this is such a great example of great cast, great production, a semi-interesting plot because it's about TV and running a private TV network in the 80s, but a god-awful script. The script is just terrible. The characters don't have any chemistry with each other whatsoever. The motivations are unclear. And as Neil mentioned, it is just, there isn't a single episode without sex. And the sex scenes can only be described as the word jackhammer. That's the type of sex that's depicted here. And the show doesn't shy away from the fact that it's raunchy. The show opens up with 2 characters joining the Mile High Club in a very vocally, let's just say at that as well. And it just continues. And I mean, my first ever appearance on this podcast was talking about the TV show Sex Education. I obviously don't mind sex in TV shows, but it has to serve a point and it has to contribute to the plot. And this just doesn't. There is just, in one episode, there is just a montage of sex and it's just random characters. And you're like, we don't even care about these people. Why are you showing me their naked ass? It's just doesn't let up. I even checked that if there was an intimacy coordinator on this shoot because let's just say the sex scenes were extremely unoriginal. It turns out there was an intimacy coordinator, which is good for the modern era, but the choreography, let's just say it wasn't there. Then there's the issue of just the main, there's several different subplots in this show, and I mean, the rivalry, I mean, they don't even say why these 2 characters are rivals. It's just old money versus new money. That's kind of the thing. And it's just well, I hate you because you're a twat. Well, I hate you because you're a bigger twat. That's just it. I'm sleeping with you because you're attractive. I'm sleeping with you because because my husband is having an affair and you're the only person there. It's just nonsensical. And then there is one main love story we're meant to be rooting for, and it's an enemies to lovers story. And I think I've mentioned this on this podcast before. I eat that shit up. I love enemies to lovers to the point that I've seen a lot of enemies to lovers, so I'm pretty much an expert in this genre. And for it to work, you need to have chemistry and clear motivations, and once again, it just isn't there. Her motivation is basically he's such an entitled twat, but he has a big penis, so why not? His motivation is I'm a bad boy, but she's an innocent flower. And then her dad told me to stay away from her because there's a significant age difference. That's another thing. There's a 20-year age gap between these characters, and can we just not? Can we just move on from that? That it's just, even though.
Do you think the script tries to get away with it because it's set in the 80s?
Yeah, but no.
But
like, like with these, like, you still need to, I think, these days tell stories in a modern lens, and it's just not okay anymore. Like setting up that to be the main love story. And maybe it would have worked if they actually had chemistry, but they do not have it. And also, it's just, they try to hit the same like enemies to lovers like beats where they meet and he's butt naked because, of course, as you do, because everyone just plays tennis butt naked in their back garden. That's just
it was
a
the
common
80s.
thing.
Yeah.
Thing meet, they instantly despise each other, and then I think that's the thing with the script where I was just like, okay, does she genuinely hate him? Because there's no reason for her to be attracted to him, like absolutely not, but no. And then there's the like whole arc where like she has a breakdown and then he picks her back up, but again, it's unjustified. Like when she like just starts crying, I'm like, oh girl, pull it together. It's not a big deal at this moment. Like it's again not earned. And then at the same time, her mother is constantly trying to fuck him as well. It's just no. It's
Oh my god.
the subplots in this. And then like when they finally get together, it's just like, again, romantic music, but he's kind of dating someone else, and it kind of shows that he cares about this person. And then they're like, oh, but they're not, it's like, she's not you and he's not you. It's just so yeah, I suffered a lot watching this. I genuinely do not understand where the good reviews are coming from. Like, as I said, extremely cheesy, extremely generic, nothing original. Even David Tennant doesn't save it, and I'm a massive David Tennant fan. David Tennant can play villain really, really well, as we've seen in Jessica Jones.
Jessica Jones, yeah.
In this one, he's just so slimy, but not, it's unwatchable to the point. They also like really close shave him, and he lost a lot of weight, so he also just looks really like stringy, and it's just not working. It's nothing about the show, in my opinion, works, and I really resent you guys for making me sit through this.
So Marie, my first question is, why is it popular then, do you think?
I have no idea. It's like Will Ferrell from Zoolander. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. I genuinely don't understand. Like, the set design is good. The costuming is okay. The music is all right. I think even that with the music, I think they were trying to have their like Kate Bush running up their hill moment, like trying to really popularize one, or like Murder on the Dance Floor Saltburn moment, where they really wanted to like have a viral song. So they started like pushing all these 80s classics, but it just doesn't really work well with the plot either. So yeah, if you've seen Rivals and enjoyed Rivals, please let me know why, because I genuinely cannot explain this.
Well, Marie, I'll tell you, I can ask my mum, because she literally just finished watching it this afternoon. I was like, oh, it was really good. Is there going to be a second series? I was like, I will Google and find out for you. But I guess with the, I think she'd read the books though, like back in like the 80s. So I think she had like, a link to the material and that. So it's not even good enough though to be just trashy fun.
No, it's uncomfortable fun. Like, it's not even fun. It's just uncomfortable to watch. Like, I do feel like, yeah, maybe moms of a certain age group might enjoy this. But like, I don't know, like watching this like from a modern lens, and no. And it breaks my heart if there will be a season 2, because
it takes David Tennant away from doing proper stuff again.
I mean, this is the spoiler-free version, but I don't think he will be in season 2. Let's just leave it at that.
So just to clear up, Alex Hassel and Bella McLean, are they that one main couple with the horrible storyline? I'm looking at the cast right now.
Mm-hmm.
And now Jose's going to watch the show, isn't he?
I mean, I'm curious. It's one of those things where he's like, you got to watch one episode just see how bad it is. Maybe. I mean, is it worth it?
I mean, it's up to you, and maybe it's worth it to tell me if I'm not. It's like I'm the minority here who absolutely hates it.
All right, Jose, you can go and watch this and let
one episode of Rivals, and I will let you know.
apparently there is such a thing as too much penis in a show.
Oh, well, I mean, I watch Euphoria, so I understand how that can go.
I have to give the show this, like the ratio of like female to male nudity is quite even, which I do appreciate because like usually female nudity is like prevalent more than male, but it's still I did not need to see it. I just neither. I'm fine with neither. It's just it's once again, it's just like let's have the actors naked for the sake of being naked. It's just it doesn't.
Do you think they were doing that to compensate for the bad writing and whatnot?
Maybe let's distract you with sex, and maybe that's why. Because coming from this, viewing this from an ace lens, maybe that's why it's not appealing to me.
If you look at like a show that did that exact kind of thing you was mentioning about, like the montage of everyone shagging, Sex Education literally opens its first ever episode with it, but it was funny at least, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, Sex Education like opens like with just two people, and then they do the montage at the start of season 3 when we all know the characters.
Okay, well, that's definitely a not recommend from Marie there. And Jose, you are going to take another one for the team and see if she's crazy or actually completely justified in this. This
reminds me of when we were talking. You were talking about a horror movie or something, and you were saying, "No, don't watch it." We're all like, "We kind of want to watch it now."
Only because I made it sound so bad. That's why.
Yeah. I forget. What
I
it
mean,
was.
the first time, right? No, I don't. But the first time we ever asked for people on Twitter to tell us what film to watch, someone recommended Freddy Got Fingered. Now, I love Freddy Got Fingered, but it is of its time. Very, very of its time.
So much.
And David, he was like maybe 27 at the time, watched it with his new I think he'd only been married about a month at this point, and they sat down and watched Freddy Got Fingered. And his wife literally got up and walked out after about 20 minutes, I think. He's like, Neil, we are never doing that again. And then I found out it was one of my friends who sent us a message saying, watch Freddy Got Fingered.
Of course.
Right, so moving on. Cassie, you're going to tell us about Nightbitch.
Yeah, sure. I can kind of cheat on this one just because I did have a review published, so I'm just going to pull it up to remind myself. So I went to an early screening of Nightbitch in Chicago, which was super cool because I don't get to do that very often. It's like a 2-hour drive from where I am. And, they're always like, well, maybe you don't know, but the press screenings are always like in the middle of a day and during the week. And I'm like, well, I have a job. I was going to say a boring job. I have a boring job. I can't go to these. But there was one day that I was actually had the day off work and it all worked out. So I was really excited because I got to see Nightbitch. I believe it opens wide. Yeah. December 6th, at least in America. I'm not sure if it's different in like the UK or other places in Europe. But I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I lean positive just because it is funny and different. I know it's based on a book. I haven't read the book. But Amy Adams she is just like full in. She's all in in this movie. What I found really interesting without, trying to like give anything away was how little the story is about the fact that she like thinks she's turning into a dog, which is the plot of the movie, right? Like there's
Jose's
so much
face,
else.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, do you not
Did you not know that's what the film was, Jose?
I didn't know.
Yeah. So
I just saw the cast list.
She's a stay-at-home mother, and she's just a frazzled, exhausted, like mom who's like losing her entire identity and sense of self, and then she starts to literally physically like turn into a dog. Which is that's out there. That's a part of the plot. That's not like a spoiler. Like that's
yeah.
But
there.
That's only
That's
like a small part of the movie.
So yes, because there's just so much else going on.
Okay.
And that's what was surprising to me watching it was I was like, was that even necessary? It's so dramatic, as is. And as someone who has been considering having a child, it was terrifying to watch because it's not complimentary of what parenthood would be like at all. It's like really, really terrifying. It's also So her husband is played by his name is Scoot McNairy. Are you aware of
Oh
who this
yeah,
is? He's really good at playing like a wimpy husband. He was in the Speak No Evil remake.
that's it.
Yeah,
I
I was
remember
like,
him from *Halt and Catch Fire*, that show. He was
okay.
like one of the main guys in that.
I mean, he's really found his niche as like the bitch ass husband who just kind of sucks. And
I
he's really
see
good at it. He's
I
really
see
good
him
at
on
it.
Google, and he's one of those guys like you don't know his name, but you recognize his face.
Nice. And apparently he's married to so is her name Sosie Bacon, Kevin Bacon's daughter, which I just found out recently.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
Okay.
that's random. Yeah, I know. But
All
yeah,
right.
he is, I mean, you really feel Amy Adams' frustration because he is really just a useless human being who has no idea what she as a mother is going through. And there is, it's a bit of a redemption arc and all of that. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. It's an interesting concept. I feel like it's supposed to be sort of empowering, and it came off as a little silly as opposed to empowering. That said, I did laugh. I was entertained. So I think I gave it like 3.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd because I was feeling generous. But it's it's different. It's interesting. It's a little bit, it like dips its toe into body horror just a little bit, but like maybe not quite enough. Like maybe it could have gone
Oh.
farther but it kind of,
It doesn't
yeah.
go full substance.
No, no, not at all.
Ah. Do you think as someone else with maybe a family who's going through what the character is going through might see it a little differently?
People turning into dogs.
No,
Yeah.
the having
So,
children.
well, it's funny that you say that because I saw this movie with the same person I saw Here with yesterday. And he said that movie I think just made me realize why my wife left me.
Oh my God. Oh my
Wow,
God.
I swear to God, that's what he said. That's what he
that's your
said.
poster quote right there,
Wow.
isn't it?
He was like,
There we go.
yeah, he was like, I'm gonna talk about this with my therapist because yeah, I saw myself
Wow.
in that bitch ass husband. Like he sucked and so did I. And I was like, good for you for recognizing that, you
Wow.
know?
Yeah. The only reason I asked that is because I know random context here, but uh, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is considered to be a great movie by a lot of people in general. And I like it, but I've heard of other people saying they love it so much because of the aspect of family, the two sisters, and the whole father-son dynamic. And I never thought about it, but I think certain movies, when they come at you at a certain angle, if you can relate to it through the characters for some reason, it definitely hits you more than if you're just a viewer that can't relate as much.
Oh
So
yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
For sure, for sure. And I think it's supposed to be funny and relatable to people who have kids. I just found it like terrifying. Because I was like, oh my God,
Yes.
do I want this? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then my friend said, like, yeah, that was really painfully accurate, like it's
Wow.
relatable.
So I think it's connecting with those women who are literally in that position. And I think if you think how many, the women are married, they've got kids, like the useless husband.
Again,
There's,
I
Yeah.
think it's really a warning to like be careful who you marry more than anything else, I
Oh,
think.
wow.
And
Yeah.
even more than parenthood. It's a trip. It's a trip. It's a ride. It's a movie.
Interesting.
I
That's
I,
good
I I
though.
think I'm definitely going to go and see it when it's out over here. I mean, being the UK, we're probably going to get like a dump of about 10. What do you think it's Oscar caliber? Because I know people were talking about Amy Adams potentially up for an Oscar for it beforehand.
could see her getting nominated for a Golden Globe. I don't see her
Nice.
getting nominated for an Oscar. That's just me.
Fair enough.
I don't know what I'm talking about, so I could be wrong, but that's my gut right now is no. Mm.
I've recently finished Skies and, if you're in the States, Stars Sweetpea, which is adapted by Kirsty Swain from the book of the same name by C.K. Scoos, starring Fallout's Ella Pennell as the invisible, not literally, Rhiannon. I can't. This is a funny thing in the show. People can't keep pronouncing her name wrong, and I've literally done it in the intro. Rhiannon Lewis, a quiet, bullied young woman who was pushed to her breaking point. Now, I think me and Marie, we briefly talked about the first episode on a recent show, and I said it really's got a strong resemblance to the Irish show Obituary that's on Netflix as well at the minute. And that one starred Siobhan Cullen, who was great in Netflix's other Irish crime drama, Bodkin. And in that show, she played a character, brilliant name, Elvira Clancy. What a name. And she gets a job as an obituary writer at a small local newspaper. Then she gets demoted, only getting paid per obituary. So, of course, she starts to kill people to keep her job and then obviously write the obituaries. Also, there's a handsome new co-worker who comes in with an obvious will they, won't they? And then she tries to only kill bad people. So, this other show, Sweetpea, shares so much with that show that I'm amazed people haven't just been like, have you just ripped this off and thrown more money at it? Because that's what it really feels like. Rhiannon, she works at a local newspaper as a receptionist, but she wants to be a reporter, and then she starts reporting on her crimes and move up the ladder. There's a handsome new co-worker who comes in with an obvious will they, won't they? But I would say at that point, I was a few episodes in, I was like, okay, this is just the same show, just not done as well. It's just missing the sharpness of the script that Obituary has. I think maybe the Irish setting it sears a bit more. Having said that, this show about around the midway point goes in a completely different direction. So I was kind of a bit more into it after that. And in the early episodes, we're really on side with Rhiannon. We learn about her school bully Julia Blenkinsop, how she terrorized her when they were kids, and Rhiannon literally started tearing her own hair out and had to wear a wig when she was at school. That's how bad it got. Episode 1 literally starts with her saying, "People I want to kill," and she's just like, it's a woman who's ignoring her in the supermarket. It's her boss who literally treats her as a human coat rack and throws his jacket over her in reception whenever he walks through. And you think, okay, so it's going to be setting up this big showdown with her like high school bully. And it's really surprising me how that storyline develops, and really well done to the writers when you kind of get to the midway point of the show for subverting the expectations of the genre and how I was expecting that to go. Now, Pernell, as we know from Yellow Jackets and Fallout, is really good, but I'd argue this is her best on-screen performance because she's in pretty much every scene of the show. And it's a really tricky role to pull off because, yes, she needs to make you feel sorry for her for, all the bullying and shit life she's had. And, you're almost cheering her on as she makes that first kill in the first episode. Because, the first guy's a knob and he probably deserved it. Does he deserve to die that way? Maybe a bit too far. But you're kind of on side with her because she's been through so much shit. But then as she gets more confident and kind of the confidence she gains from killing, like suddenly she's good at her job. Suddenly she's more attractive to people. Suddenly she's much more confident at everything. And so it's a really kind of a tightrope you got to walk because you're like, is she actually getting too crazy to root for as the show comes on? How is it going to go? Because certainly she's going to hit a point of no return where you can't come back from. I mean, arguably the end of the first episode, really, she can't come back from that. But yeah, as an audience, are we still on her side as the show goes on? There's some really good support in it as well. You've got Ted Lasso's Jeremy Swift, and he's like the bumbling editor of the newspaper. You've got a guy called Dustin Demi Burns, who I don't think I've seen in anything. He plays Jeff. Jeff's the obnoxious reporter. And from the first time you meet Jeff, you're like, you're going to be on the list, mate. You're so going to be on the list. Nicole Leckie does great work as Rhiannon's nemesis, Julia. And what could really be a one-note bully role, she injects so much more into her performance, and she really shines in the show's closing stages. I would say go and watch Obituary first if you haven't heard of it, because like I say, it's a small little Irish show that was made in Ireland. It was put on RTE, and then Netflix acquired it. And the only way I discovered this was they had their show Bodkin, which was one about podcasters solving a crime in Ireland. And I thought, it's fine. It's a good show. It didn't blow me away. It didn't go perhaps as far as I thought it was going to go. I was expecting like a cross between The Wicker Man and Hot Fuzz, set in Ireland. That's what the trailer makes it look like. You're like, oh, this is going to be cool. Will Forte's in it as well. So you got the bumbling American offending all the Irish people. I was like, this is going to be really good. And I can't even remember how it ended because it just wasn't that interesting. But the lead actress in it was really good. And then when that show finished, Netflix's algorithm showed me another show. I was like, is that the same actress? Wait, is it another Irish murder show? Okay, I'm going to watch it. And then I went through like a month of watching any Irish show where there was murders. And I think I cleared them all, to be fair.
Yes.
Also, let me recommend Kin with Charlie Cox in it, because what a show. And Aidan Gillen as well. Brilliant show. It's like three seasons of that now on the iPlayer in the UK on BBC. And take a breath, Neil. Jose, what would you like to talk about?
Well, my movie that I watched, it stars Brad Pitt and George Clooney and is not an Ocean's 11 sequel.
Isn't it?
It is on Apple TV, one of my favorite channels now, or
Yes.
streaming services, and it's called Wolves, not Wolves. It's WOLFS, and it took me a second.
Not spelled this way, Jose.
Not spelled like Neil's T-shirt. Wolves of Glendale. So to give you an understanding of this, the title, it's. I'm going to give you the shortest possible explanation. It's two guys who end up realizing they both do the same thing. They're technically lone wolves, so the title kind of plays on that. So it's George Clooney and Brad Pitt play fixers for a mysterious group of people, and so the whole plot revolves around them fixing something that happens in a hotel room in the middle of the night, and it also involves Austin Abrams as the person they have to help get through the night. And it is definitely a slow burn, but one movie I would like to compare it to that is kind of like a slow burn but totally different vibes is The Killer with Michael Fassbender from last year.
Fassbender. Okay.
So that's obviously David Fincher. This is John Watts, and I feel like those two directors really separate the kind of feelings you get. Like this is more of a fun gang movie.
Is it fun though? Is it fun, Jose?
I liked it. So getting a heads up from someone else I know said that it was not great. So I was like, okay, I see the trailer. I'm not expecting a lot, and I watched
Seen the
movie.
film because you've seen the trailer.
I saw the trailer, and, and I gotta say, going into it knowing it wasn't expected to be great, and just kind of letting it happen, I really enjoyed it actually.
Oh.
It's kind of like a character piece on two older men realizing. I think one of the running gags that I enjoyed the most was the fact that they had bad backs and they both would like do something and be like, oh, and then they just keep going. And I'm starting to relate to that as an older man. But if there's one thing I could say to kind of really put it into context, if this was part of a larger series like The Penguin, this would be a filler episode, honestly, because
it's like a hang movie. Then the stakes are fairly low.
Yes. Right? Up until you get to the ending and realize what's going on. The ending is really interesting because you think it's going one way and then something happens and then they realize stuff and then there could or could not be a sequel. Yeah. So it just, even if it's a standalone film and never gets a sequel, I think the way it ends is pretty interesting and it is a good take on making the whole movie something you can watch again, maybe. I wouldn't say you'd watch it like 3 or 4 times. I'd say you watch it once and then maybe and maybe watch it one more time just to kind of be like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. But it's not like anything you would watch multiple times. It's very much you see it and you enjoy it and you're done.
Mate, despite your best attempts, I don't even think I'm going to watch it one time. If I'm honest.
I mean,
there's a lot of better stuff on Apple. There's a lot of better stuff on Apple TV.
Yeah, to be honest, it's not for everyone. It's if you like character pieces that are subtly funny, there's no real negativity in it. So
what would you give it? Would you say it's a perfectly fine 3-star film, or would be 3 stars pushing it?
I'd say 3.5, honestly. You have to, if you enjoy this kind of because Brad Pitt and George Clooney have a great rapport, and I think that really carries the film. If you're a fan of them and you don't worry about having to have action a lot, like this has some good moments of action. It's just not a lot.
I mean, I think that's what I kind of gathered from it. People basically it's George Clooney and Brad Pitt being George Clooney and Brad Pitt, and they should have probably written scripts to go along with that. It was one of the negative reviews I saw. But,
yeah, I mean, I can understand people who don't like it, and I say, you know what, if you didn't like it, I get it. But if you think you'd like George Clooney and Brad Pitt enough to watch an entire film of them going back and forth with some banter, I'd
being
say
old,
check it out. Yeah, it's definitely. I wouldn't say if you're under 25, you wouldn't like it. So,
I don't think that's our listenership, Jose. I think we're.
There we go. We're safe. Yeah, but it's a good just kind of maybe even put on. I don't know if you want to just put it on the background because you have to pay attention. But I'd say I doubt.
I feel like I saw the trailer and I saw the film, mate.
Yeah.
So, if I'm laid up in bed with and I can't walk anywhere, like I break my ankle or something, then I might watch it.
If you have a day of being able to binge stuff, then I guess.
If I'm sick in bed, perhaps was a better way to say it. Right, moving on to Marie, from one of your worst subjects that you clearly didn't like at all, to one of your favourite thing, which is vampires and gay vampires. Tell us all about Interview with a Vampire.
Oh yes. So yeah, after the Turd Fest that was Rivals, I needed like a palate cleanser. And unfortunately, I'm very limited with streaming opportunities at this current moment, but this one was available to me on one of the sites that I have. And that was Interview with a Vampire. Now, I went into this story actually completely blind. I hadn't interacted with it before. I never saw the movie and I hadn't read the book. I just knew the concept, which is in the title. It's an interview with a vampire. So um and I know there's like some changes from the original original book and the movie. So this version takes place in modern times. It takes place during 2022. A reporter gets flown out to Dubai to conduct an interview with a vampire he met in 1970 San Francisco. Another interesting element to this is that they wrote COVID into the script, which I don't know about you guys, but I find it now so weird to see COVID as a plot point, having now lived through that. It's just like, it's like, oh yeah.
The worst thing I ever saw that was when the morning show tried doing it in the second season and they gave Jennifer Aniston COVID. I mean, they didn't give Jennifer Aniston COVID, sorry. Her character got COVID. And then they decided to put it on
They would
TV.
go far for storytelling.
I mean, you never know. Yeah. She's a producer, right? So, yeah. Sorry, Gary.
Yeah, but it adds this interesting element of mortality to the story because the whole world is going through something terrible, and then there's the immortal figure of a vampire observing this literally in his like penthouse suite in the biggest skyscraper ever in Dubai. So the story follows journalist Daniel Malloy, who interviews Louis and about his life as a vampire. What makes this so good is that, and it's said from the beginning, that Louis is an unreliable narrator. You're getting like his story, but basically because either time, because it's been centuries, the story starts in 1920s New Orleans, and then moves up to and then travels through modern day, which some jumps. Louis, we were constantly reminded either because of the passage of time, Louis is not remembering these events correctly, or at the same time, there's a psychological element to it where Louis doesn't want to actually admit to himself the actual tragedy of his life and what he's gone through. So it is interesting. And because, of course, it's an interview, the story is mostly told with narration, which I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast. It is one of my least favorite storytelling tools. I think some people use narration as a crutch, and it can lead to very unoriginal storytelling. But here it works really well. I think what adds to it is that the actor Jacob Anderson, who plays Louis, has a very nice voice and is the narration is very powerful, and he can introduce so much sadness in his voice that it just has an impact. And as Neil mentioned, it is very queer. Queer because the story also mainly follows Louis and Lestat, the vampire who turned him. And I think this is the first iteration where they're actually openly together. I know the movie was queer coded, but it was never confirmed that they were actual couple, which is kind of funny because it's always looking back in history, you're like, oh, they were such good friends, or they were roommates. And it's just no, we all know what was happening. And then there is this link between vampirism and queerness, and just so that's it's not even just queer because the characters are queer. It's just also there's a lot of queer themes like loneliness. There's this amazing bit of dialogue. I think it's episode 1 or maybe 2 where Louis describes his journey of becoming a vampire. This is not a spoiler, by the way, but Louis describes his journey to become a vampire, and he's like, in one night I died, I came back to life, I committed murder, and I came out of the closet. And the interviewer was Daniel is just you equivalate becoming a vampire to coming out of the closet. And he was just like, I was a gay man in 1920s New Orleans. Like, do you like, of course, that was like a big moment for me to acknowledge that I was queer, to acknowledge that I am attracted to the same sex. And obviously, as someone who identifies as queer, that is like really interesting. And also, like, I resonated with that a lot. And I knew going into this show that it had a cult following, but it wasn't very critically acclaimed. But as Rivals prove it, critics know shit because this show honestly is phenomenal. And when I finished the first episode, I genuinely, I think, had a hangover where I was just like, holy shit, that was good. Like, it's just not just the acting, the staging, the story, how they put it together. With some exceptions, they stay consistent with vampire physics, which I do really appreciate. It's something that I really it's one of my pet peeves when someone plays a vampire and then lifts a person up like a dead body and you can see that they're struggling underneath their weight. And you're like, no, you're a vampire. You're super strong. You shouldn't be struggling. Or speed, because vampires are super fast. And like they just completely ignore that in some stories. That drives me crazy as well. They do their best to consistency. They use a lot of wire work to introduce the like ghostly movements of the vampires. There's like an amazing moment in episode 1 with Lestat where it's like very eerie and it's very good wire work, and it's even in just the background, which makes it so much more creepy, but it's just such a cool little moment where just like, oh yeah, he's a bad vampire. It's but honestly, I highly recommend Interview with a Vampire, and I watched season 1 and season 2. I know season 3 is in production, which I am actually honestly quite hesitant about because season 1 and season 2 were so solid. And if the story had ended there, I think it would have been like a good, like an amazing show. But we'll see where season 3 goes. It's just like, well, I'm curious because I know there's more than one book, so I'm curious to see where the story goes. But at the same time, I was like, they should have just kept it at 2 because the final line was also so good. It was such a good moment. So yeah, I highly recommend it.
Do you think they originally planned for season 2 if they weren't getting the season 3, and then because I think you said about it not being critically reviewed, I think it's been quite well critically reviewed. It's just that it took like a year to come over to England from when it came out in the States. So, God knows when you got it in Portugal.
I mean, I just noticed it was very underneath the radar and not many people were talking about it. And I mean, it is like, I don't even know. I don't know because it's not produced by any of the big streaming channels. So I think that's like adds to it. But I'm not sure like what their plan was because I don't know. I think they wrapped everything up nicely in a bow, but there might be some like unanswered questions. One thing that what they did like really good with season 1 and season 2, because Louis is such an unreliable narrator, like we see scenes in season 1 and then we see them in a different context in season 2, and you're like, okay, which one was the real one? And they do that throughout, and I think that's like really interesting, where it's like one of those things where you have to really pay attention to like what's happening and like it's going, okay, like who's telling the story here. And there are also like some really interesting twists that happen. Like season 1 ends on a pretty like big interesting twist, and it's again solid ending for the final season. But that season 1 like ends with like there is going to be a season 2. Like it wasn't all wrapped up whereas season 2 does feel like it's more wrapped up in a bow.
Here's a question for me. Do you think you're a little hesitant to watch the movie with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise?
I think it would just make Marie angry.
Well, I mean, I wonder how much of because that movie is based off the original book, because there are other books that
but so this series
is
based off the first one as well, I believe.
But how much of the book is covered in each season?
See, I don't know because like I haven't read the book either. And to be honest, I'm not hesitant to check out the movie. It's just something that I've never. I don't like Tom Cruise, so that's why I don't think I ever watched the movie.
Fair.
And
I'd say that's probably one of his best roles, though. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was like surprised when I checked the cast list to see that Tom Cruise actually played Lestat. I thought Brad Pitt was Lestat, but he was Louis, which like kind of shifted the characters in mind. It's just never appealed to me. I don't know.
Okay.
I think just wait for season 3.
Yeah. No, I'm saying just in like maybe not right now, but maybe if season 3 is the ending, or just if you find out, because I didn't even know about the series, but I'm a big fan of the movie, and it's been a while, and to have the idea of like, oh, they were a couple, I'm like, oh, obviously, duh, but like also mind blown.
It was
Sorry.
it was a simpler time for Jose when you watched the original film, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was just like, oh yeah, that makes sense now. Why didn't it come across that idea before? Because you're right. It's like because a lot of those movies, like it's like watching a movie as a kid, you just take it at face value, and then you watch movies when you're an adult, you're like, oh, that was a dirty joke, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. There's a lot of nuance that you don't really that doesn't
Hmm.
register.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Definitely.
I am curious to now want to watch this show as well.
Well, there you
So
go,
I
Jose. You got
highly
2
recommend
seasons.
it, and I think you would enjoy it. There's also quite a I mean, maybe not in the level of you guys because you actually watch horror movies, but there is actually quite a lot of gore and horror elements in there. It's one of the
hmm.
main reasons I'm not going to be recommending this to my mom because I know she couldn't be able to deal with those scenes. Uh, but yeah, it doesn't shy away from the fact that they're vampires, and I think it does also introduce some cool elements of vampire lore into the story. The effect of like when they step out a step into the sun is really cool, and I think that's really original, where like when they're
Ooh.
exposed to the sun, it honestly looks like the ash is like falling off them like sand. It's like this really cool effect where it's like,
Oh
ah,
wow.
I don't think I've ever seen it done.
I think vampire effects have probably come on a long way since the days of Angel and Buffy.
Is it
Oh,
sad
they
that
were pretty solid back then as
They were
well.
solid, but
is it
yeah.
sad for like a split second? I was thinking Twilight glowing skin,
Yeah,
and
I
then like
thought of
Yeah,
I thought
no,
of
they don't sparkle
sparkly
in this
Rob
one.
Pattinson was where my
yeah,
brain went.
and then I'm like, oh wait, they burn up in that world. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of horror, I'm going to segue from Interview with the Vampire back to you, Cassie, and you're going to be telling us about Smile 2.
Yeah, which I feel like it's such old news now. It's been out for
Yeah.
like forever now. Like when we first talked, I was like, "Oh, I just saw Smile 2 yesterday. I'll talk about Smile 2." And now like everyone's seen it, but that's fine. We
Good
can still
Houses
talk
just
about
came out in Portugal. We get
it.
everything extremely late.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, have you guys seen the original? Have you seen Smile? The first
Yes.
one? You have. Okay.
No, I've
Did
seen
you?
a spoiler review. I don't watch horror, so but I don't know
Oh, you
what's
don't. Oh,
going
yeah, you
on.
said that. You said that.
I
Okay.
I've seen the synopsis, and I accidentally saw a clip of something happening in the end of the movie, I think, and that's
How
about
do
it.
you actually? No, I don't even know.
Accidentally saw a clip of something happening.
YouTube stuff, like movie stuff, I
Yeah.
was like, oh man, now I kind of know the ending, so I don't
Was it a
know.
video that said, "You'll never guess what happened at the end of Smile, Jose"?
Well, it's honestly kind of like a visual effects stuff, so that's why
Okay.
I was like, oh, okay. I don't want to
So
give it away.
yeah. Well, speaking of yeah, like visual effects. So there is there's an opening scene that's really disconnected from the rest of the movie. Again, I will not spoil. But it is used to wrap up sort of stuff that happened in the first movie, right? Which a lot of the times you have to do whenever there's a sequel to a horror movie, right? Um, and that scene is one of the coolest shot scenes I've seen in such a long time. And there's a shot where Kyle Gallner's character Joel runs and jumps through the window of a house and then runs through they actually played part of it in the trailer. He literally gets like hit by a truck in the trailer, so
Oh,
that's not a spoiler. But yeah, so he jumps through the window, runs through the yard and into the street, and then it just goes wide on the house, and it's just the coolest shot ever. And um because of movies like Here where everything is fake and green screened, I guess I just assumed that there was some like fakery involved because it just looks so cool. And I messaged someone that I know that's involved in the making of it, and he was like, no, they had a camera attached to a crane, and it was hoisted onto one of those mini cars, and like he jumped through the window, and then the car drove and went well, and it was practical, and which makes
wow.
it even cooler. I know I was like, I don't know why I didn't think of that because for some reason you just assume everything is
Yeah.
baked these days, but it wasn't. So yeah, the first scene alone, almost could be like a, I don't know, like a short horror film of its own. It did suffer from a little bit of that dialogue, that syndrome where they're making it really obvious that they're trying to remind people of what is happening because of what happened in the last movie, right? Like they're kind of over explaining as it's happening. Which it's like, would this person really say this right now?
It's like,
Like,
oh, do
we
you remember what
remember.
just happened to us 2 days ago by
Right,
this thing
exactly.
happening?
Very over explaining in the heat of the moment. It's like, I don't think you would be saying this right now. So it suffered from a little bit of that. But still, very, very cool opening scene. And then the rest of the movie honestly could function as its own movie, like, and not even be a sequel, and you wouldn't even know, really. Which is interesting to me. It's really, I think that's one of the reasons that it's really good, and it has been really well received. Is it's really very much its own thing. It's very, I mean, there's a musical,
Oh,
that movie Trap, Lady Raven. It's like another pop star, tortured, suffering pop star. Yeah, the main character, she's like a pop singer. She's this famous singer. And it's very trippy, very kind of like Marie, you were talking about unreliable narrator, but the narrator is like the camera. Like it's the movie itself. Like, you don't know what is happening. Like you don't know what's real and what's not, and you don't know like what to trust, what to believe, which is fun. So it really has a psychological aspect to it, like a psychological thriller aspect, which I love. Um, Naomi Scott's performance is like, she is so locked in. That's what the kids say, right? Locked in. She's so locked in. Like
wrong crowd to ask.
phenomenally locked in. Just trust me, yeah.
Did she eat? Did she?
Yeah, she eats.
Oh, God.
Yeah, her performance ate. It's just it's creepy, it's weird, it's very trippy at times. You see there's a cameo from Jack Nicholson's son who looks just like Jack Nicholson. It's really weird.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't.
A lot of really good acting. It's just it's entertaining. It flies by. It's it's over 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like it's over 2 hours. And then, well, I just went for fun. I didn't go as like I wasn't reviewing it or anything like that. I just wanted to see it. And at my screening, they like, the last 60 seconds of pretty much every horror movie, something insane always happens right before the credits roll. And they turn the lights on a minute before the movie was over. I'm not kidding. I almost I was like, should I ask for my money back? I was like, should I be hearing about this? Because you just ruined everything. So, apart from that experience, which had nothing to do with the movie itself, yeah, that's Smile 2. It's a really solid sequel. It's fun. I mean,
I just missed it because there was so much out at the time.
Yeah.
And I just didn't get a chance I forget what I saw because I got one of these Cineworld cards in the UK. So like you pay like, I don't know, it's like 180 quid a year, and you can pretty much go to cinema whenever you want and see whatever you want at the cinema as many times. Although they do have a limit. You can't book more than 10 films in a row now, as I found out, with like all the unlimited screenings coming up and that. And what's
some weirdos were just trying to live there, probably.
Neil is that weirdo.
Yeah, they're like, you cannot watch 4 movies a day, sir, every day.
He has his
My
favorite
limit
season
is
and
jealous.
everything.
Definitely did 3 back to back on a day a couple of times. Definitely done 3.
Now,
But that was Back to the Future Day. Sorry, go ahead, Jose.
Would you say that the movie gets a nice financial and therefore visual bump because of the success of the first one?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's very clearly a bigger budget, which a lot of the time I think they will use as an excuse to sort of slack off and make the story not as good, right? But I really think they did good things with it, and I think making it so completely different than the first Smile movie really worked.
The budget for this was only like 28 million. Which,
Only, yeah.
Again,
Only,
so like,
pocket
wow.
money.
it's probably like double what the first one was. But
Yeah,
again, that's why horror films are always massively successful, because they don't cost a lot and they make an absolute ton. And this just took out almost 110 million already, and it's probably still
And
on around.
Wow.
yeah. And I mean, the story, the plot itself doesn't necessarily reinvent the wheel. Like the first Smile movie was an allegory for trauma. Like what? Like every horror movie is an allegory for trauma, right? And
Yeah.
it kind of is along that same vein, but there's an element of the impact on social media and everyone having a smartphone at all times that sort of is just making it so much worse. And how mental health is impacted that way. So it's cool, it's smart, it's timely, and yeah.
Nice.
I'm curious. Have you seen movies integrate smartphones more, like in a way that makes sense? You think? Because I remember with horror movies back in the day, to help with the plot, they'd be like out in the middle of nowhere with no cell reception. That's why they couldn't call the police.
Right.
Do you think that some of the movies now, more specifically horror movies, are getting smart about the whole cell phone situation?
Yeah, well, I always say it's one of the reasons that, I mean, we're not talking about sitcoms, but it's one of the reasons sitcoms don't work anymore was because the foundation of like sitcoms was always based on miscommunications and people not being able
Yeah.
to communicate with each other, right? And well, he said this or that, but I don't know where he is. And we know where everyone is at all times now because we just text them, right? So that's just
Yeah.
like not even a
Yeah.
thing anymore. It just doesn't happen. So you're right. You need to be smarter about that kind of a thing when you're thinking up the story like this.
Although not horror films related, actually, there's one of the best sitcoms on at the minute. It's an Australian one called Colin from Accounts. If you hadn't, it's such a good show.
I've been meaning to catch that.
Jose, it's like, yeah, it's the best. Calling it a rom-com almost is a disservice because it's so sharply written. It's so good, and I love that the two characters in it, they're not like stereotypes. They're one's like a junior nurse, the other one owns his own like brewery. There's a bit of an age difference in the thing. We've talked about it a little bit before, but in season 2, there's an episode where he's doing a big meal. He's like, "I'm going to do a nice like meal. I'm going to cook." Spends all day cooking a meal for his girlfriend, and she's coming home from work, and she falls asleep on the train, and someone nicks her bag that has her phone in it, and she
Oh.
ends up in this like an hour away from where she needs to be with no mobile phone. And then it almost becomes like a version of Scorsese's After Hours, where in a half an hour sitcom where she's, she sees two girls. Can you get me an Uber? Oh no, Mum said not to talk to strangers, and they keep walking and like things like that. Like she goes into a restaurant and like tries to run out without paying, so they'll call the police on her, and they don't. They just feel sorry for her. So, well, can you use a phone? Oh no, it's customers only, and then they chuck her out. It's like things like that.
Yeah.
And they keep each other on the way, but it just shows you like not having a mobile phone. It almost happened to me. I went up to a show at Wembley in the summer, and my power bank stopped working. So I was like, okay, I need to be really careful with like taking pictures and videos, because I still need to get an Uber back to wherever the hell my hotel is afterwards. And I was down to like 5%, and of course, there's no cell reception near Wembley. There's no internet reception near Wembley after it kicks out. And I walked for about an hour and a half, and just to risk turning my phone on to somewhere I could get an Uber, because I'm thinking, how do I get home without my phone at the minute? It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another risk with cell phones is we don't memorize people's phone numbers anymore. So you don't have your
Oh,
phone. You don't know who to
yeah.
call, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
like certain
goodness.
scenarios where you get arrested and you're like, you get one phone call, and I'm like,
Right.
how
I
the
don't know.
fuck I don't think I'm planning on getting arrested anytime soon, but still, it's just like in those scenarios where I'm just
true.
like, oh, I would be
Yeah,
screwed.
no, I don't know any of my friends' phone numbers. I just have them saved in my phone. Like,
Yeah.
But also, we don't even call people anymore. It's all over
Right.
like
You just text. Right. I know.
Messenger.
It's so true. It's
Like-
so true.
Random number. I'm not picking this up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Well, this brings us on to one of the last things we're going to talk about today, and that is the franchise. So, from John Brown, Armando Iannucci, and Sam Mendes comes another satirical comedy, and this time, instead of taking its aim at politics like they did in Veep, The Thick of It, In the Loop, shows like that, this one is going to take the piss out of movie studios, and in particular, superhero films. So this show is a behind-the-scenes look at a superhero film called Tecto, Eye of the Storm, which only exists because it's a tiny mid-budget film for the much larger Reed Avengers team-up film called Centurious 2. Now, this show has such an amazing cast, and it's primarily told from the point of view of Himesh Patel's character, Daniel Kumar, an overworked, stressed-out first assistant director whose job it just seems to be permanent firefighting and reassuring all the fragile egos on set of the other workers, the other talent, just to keep the film moving, and hopefully they all keep their jobs. You've got Stormfront from The Boys, Aya Cash here, not being an
Yes.
artsy this time, but she plays Anita, an ambitious new producer on the film, and she just sees it as like a stepping stone to doing more prestige work. You've got a local talent to where I live, Jessica Hines from Spaced. She's in it playing a script supervisor who staunchly backs up every word from our German director, Eric Bachard, which doesn't sound very German, but he's definitely German because he's played by someone Marie knows from when you were much younger, Daniel Bruhl.
I'm always so happy when I see him doing well in Hollywood. I'm like, oh, because I know him from like being a child actor.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we will get into your story of going to Colin Farrell's acting academy at someday in a later episode, Marie. We will
Oh,
definitely.
I'm surprised you remember that.
But yeah, crank up the
Right.
metameter. It means Baron Zemo is making a superhero film in this one. You've got Lolly Adefope, probably best known for the UK Ghost show. She plays Dag, and she's a new third assistant director. And she's just a sarcasm. She's the sarcasm of the show. She's just everyone's so afraid to not say the wrong thing on the film set, and she's just got no filter. She'll just absolutely say what the audience is thinking, or like the worst possible thing to say at any point. I reckon she'll be running the studio by the end of the series. That's how it's going because she's like failing upward with every insult she like says out to people. However, my favorite double act of the whole show is the film's insecure lead actor Adam, and he's played by Billy Magnuson, who hasn't done a lot, but you might remember he was like the really crap baddie in the new version of Roadhouse. He was like the Bane guy's rubbish son. But the undoubted MVP of the show is Richard E. Grant's Peter Fairchild, a seasoned British thespian who openly detests everything about the film he's making and all his co-workers. He's foul-mouthed, and every line out of his mouth is pure comedy gold. I mean, just in the first episode, they leave him in front of the lights too long, and they burn his eyeballs. And they go. He's gone blind. Has he gone blind? Well, I can't fucking. And then he just says, "You flashbanged my eyeballs, you spineless fuckhead." That's just a standard line, you know. Honestly, imagine a swearier Alan Rickman from Galaxy Quest, and you're halfway there to how brutally horrific Grant is in this. And actually, it's funny doing an interview. This comes back to my Hugh Grant story from earlier. I remembered it. Yay! So Richard E. Grant was doing an interview about what it's like in the film industry, and he's saying how, like, you know, the films only really get made because of like the runners and that. And he goes, when my daughter started in the industry, she started as a runner, and one actor who will remain nameless was an absolute dipshit to her, so much so that she basically just didn't want to do it anymore. And of course, everyone looks her up on the IMDb. What films did she work on? Oh, she worked on these 3 films. Oh, all with the same actor. That actor was Hugh Grant. So I'm not saying it was Hugh Grant, but being an internet detective.
But it was Hugh Grant. Yeah.
But it was Hugh Grant. Definitely sounds like Hugh Grant. Yeah. I do work in the office I work in. We do have some people who work in the industry in different jobs, and one guy was just like, "Yeah, I know people who know people, and he is not a nice person in real life." So we're probably never going to get Hugh Grant on here, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. I love how later on in the show as well they introduce Catherine Waterson's character, and she's a brilliant actress, is always really underrated. But her character is just a direct attack on Brie Larson and the toxicity that surrounds her and the Captain Marvel and all the basement dwelling bedwetters elements of toxic fandom. You know, when you can't have a strong, powerful female in a superhero movie now because apparently men can't handle it for some reason. And her character is literally just there to do that. Like, you know, she's like, I'm just about to wrap. I just want to go home. And they're like, yeah, we're making your role bigger and we're giving you a special power stick. And then, of course, the actor's like, but that's bigger than my invisible hammer. And like, that's the kind of stupid shit they're having to deal with. And like these conversations that people are trying to defuse on a daily basis. And I've really enjoyed this show so far. I think we're like 4 episodes in, but I think I've spoken to a few people, and I seem to be more up on it than quite a few other people. There's a guy in my office, like I say, who's works in the industry, and he's just, I don't find it funny. It's not funny. And Jose, counterpoint.
Yes, it is not funny. No,
And it is.
no. So I'll give you this. The writing is smart. It's clean. It's sharp, and I can see where they're trying to be funny. I think it's just not. I'm not in that group. I think this is made for people who have worked on sets, who've worked with people like this. Again, I think it's one of those things where if you relate to it, it's funnier than it really is. Because as a viewer, like I'm a fan of Marvel, and this is obviously skewering Marvel. And I get what they're
And
doing.
DC, I think.
And DC. Oh, definitely. Both Marvel and DC. And there was even a moment, like just a moment in the early first episode where they're just doing this really great long take. And like they're like, hey, we need to do this. Can we do it in visual effects? And then they ask a really tired looking man, can you do this in post? And he's like, I forget what he even said, but I just thought, okay, they're trying to make a joke about visual effects people being overworked, but then they kind of just blew it off after that. And I think that there is so much potential, and I've only seen 2 episodes. I'm gonna finish it, even though I don't like it, just for Marie's sake, because she took one for the team before. But I do think that there is so much potential for this show because at the end of the first episode, the main character tells this story
Well,
about
this
a
is a
circus.
running thing on at the end of every episode, isn't it?
You know, I didn't really pay attention to the end of the second
Yeah,
episode, so
so
I
I know
don't
what you're going
know.
to say, mate. So yeah, at the end of every episode, whereas the credits are rolling, they have like the EPG electronic press kit interviews. So there are all these like little interviews that the cast always have to do to promote the film and like be super positive about it. And it's usually Richard E. Grant not doing that and just being. I mean, he's goes on about a monkey beating someone to death on a set at some point, or did they beat the monkey to death? It gets very dark. It gets very
No,
dark, but it
Richard E.
keeps you
Grant is
watching.
great about being a horrible older man with very different stories, but that wasn't what I was going to talk about, Neil. It's the
Oh,
story of the circus performer, the guy who cleans up the elephant crap at the, and so that story, it showed like a really good moment of realizing, okay, there is some heart to the show, and I don't want to give away the story because I obviously will not do it justice, but I feel like there's a lot of potential, and I want to give Billy Magnuson, the guy who plays the superhero, some credit because he's a great character actor. He was in Roadhouse, but he's also in um, Game Night, which I thought was a
oh
great
yeah, yeah.
underrated movie. And what's the TV show Made for Love with Kristen Milioti?
Ah,
And
yeah.
I have
He played the husband in that, didn't he?
he played the tech billionaire husband, and I've heard great things. It's on my watch list. I need to get on that because I've seen Kristen Milioti get a lot of praise for that show as well, and so it's just I feel like that guy is getting his time coming. I think he's gonna blow up soon if because I just every time I see him, even in stuff like this where he's not really blowing up on the show, but I feel like you could just see he's meant for more. Maybe not as a good guy. I don't think he's a good guy kind of actor. He was pretty good as the bad guy, but I think he's more of a character actor that has a lot
I
of
think
potential.
he could corner the market on Loser Husbands again pretty well, actually. I think he's
Yeah,
got
but
that vibe, hasn't he?
yeah, but I think if anything though, this show is really well written. I can't deny that.
Well, it's
I
the people
think
who did Veep, man. Like Veep.
yeah.
But I think you're right in one thing there, Jose. Well, maybe more than one thing, but I think it's, yeah, I think if you work in the industry, you relate to it so much more. I mean, like you say, my day job, I'm a video editor, and I'm just like, and someone's like, oh yeah, can you just like change everything you've done in like 2 minutes? Oh yeah, sure. No, that's
Yeah.
only spent 3 days working on it. Of course we can just absolutely change everything last minute. And then someone will nod and say, oh great, and you're like, no, it's been sarcastic.
Yeah, and another thing that kind of puts it in perspective is this other movie that was very similar called The Bubble, which I don't think it did nearly as well of a job
I didn't
doing
mind
what
it.
I mean, it was fine. I didn't enjoy that movie either because I was like, this is too close to home for people who are in the business. I see what they're doing, but it
I
was
mean, he saw
fine.
Cassie wake up though because
I know.
Pedro
I've
Pascal was in
only
the
seen
bubble.
the scenes with Pedro, but I know he's in
I
it.
did not expect his scenes with Daisy Ridley in it either. I did not see that coming.
Yeah. But yeah, I think this is a better written show, so I think that really
It sounds like
carries.
you're having a reverse ferret on it, Jose. You're now, oh, okay, now you're
I,
giving it more
I
of a chance.
see the potential. I'm not saying I had a great time with the first 2 episodes, but again, I feel like it's gonna get better by the way you
I
speak
look
of it.
forward to it every
Yeah,
episode each week. I check when is it
yeah.
was on in a minute. Okay, well, I think that about rounds us off today. I think we're come to the end of our time here today on the We Needed Rose podcast. I'd like to thank our first time guest, Cassandra. It's been great having you here today.
Yay.
And
Oh,
where can
thanks.
people find you on the socials?
On Twitter 24/7. Yeah.
Just look
No,
for the
I'm
Pedro Pascal posts.
yep, exactly. Yeah, just search his name and my stuff will pop up, I think. So I'm at the Movie Mermaid is my Twitter handle, and then
Oh,
I'm at the Movie Mermaid is my Instagram as well. And then my pinned link is, or my pinned tweet post, whatever they're calling them now, has a link to like the websites that I've written for and stuff like that. So, my email's in there if you want to like email nice things to me, whatever. for it.
Pedro
But
Pascal's phone number,
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I'm constantly posting like my thoughts on movies and reviews and stuff like that on Twitter. So that's where you're most likely to find me.
Excellent, excellent. I'd like to thank Marie, who has now let us know there is definitely a thing as too much penis in the show this episode. And where can people find you on the socials so they can agree or disagree with you, Marie?
You can find me under the handle Life on Mars. That is TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. I do not interview vampires. However, if you want to know how to achieve mortality, because climate change will kill you, you can check out my podcast, Two Girls, One Reusable Cup, which is all about living a low waste lifestyle in your 20s. And that's wherever you get your podcasts.
And of course, Jose, I'd like to thank you for your service of watching yet another underwhelming streaming film. And where can people find you?
If you want to look at my portraiture, you can find me on Instagram at Jose Lopez Photos. If you want wedding photography, go look at jlopezphotos.com. And
Now, Jose, just to clarify for the listeners, JLo Photos, there are no pictures of JLo on there that you have taken or pictures of any of her weddings.
No, none of her weddings, no paparazzi. I'm not sure if I want to do her weddings now because that might be cursed. But
but you would get a lot of business out of it.
You get to meet Ben Affleck for a third time.
You'd be a repeat customer for sure.
Yes, she'd get the punch. She'd probably get a free wedding at this point.
Yeah.
Buy two, get one free. Yeah.
There you go.
Right, and I'm off to apply for video editing jobs as from tomorrow. As this is recorded, I am technically unemployed. So if you need a video editor, podcast producer, videographer, or a film TV nerd guest on your podcast, hit me up because I basically have the time for the next couple of months until I'm hopefully back in work again. So drop me a DM on Twitter, and I'm at Needed Roads because I forgot the we. We'll see you next time, folks.
We Needed Roads.